Whether you're new to pool and practicing the basics, or a more experienced player performing drills to improve your shot making and positional play, the Drill Partner is perfect for you.
All right, welcome back to another episode of Doggin. I'm really excited about this one today. I was sitting in the airport, Melina, the other day, and my phone rings, and I look down, and it's Tony Robles. And I'm like, hey, check it out. And he's like, hey, man, I want to come on. I want to talk about some stuff. And I will never turn down that opportunity. Welcome to the show, Tony.
Welcome, Tony.
Oh, no, we can't hear him.
We can't hear you, buddy.
Sorry about that.
Okay,
it's such a pleasure to be on the show. Thank you so much for having me. I think you two are doing an incredible service for the community that we all love. And I hope you keep up the good work because you're both very good at what you do.
We appreciate that compliment, Tony, especially coming from a legend like you, buddy.
Yeah, we're just out here every day talking about pool, and the more people we can get talking about pool, which is why we're always telling our people, try to share this content, right? Not really to boost us up or anything, but just to get more people talking about pool. Like, I know you have a lot of recognition, Tony, when you're out there and about with pool players, with pro pool players and good pool players, but I want that Tuesday night APA League or BCA League guy to be able to see you out of the airport and be like, Tony, can I get an autograph? So that's why we're trying to do this,
Yeah, the addition that we're building to our house is taken. This April will be 2 years, but we're gonna be done soon. We're at the tail end of it, and it's pretty much overtaken my life. I haven't been able to do anything, play, practice, nothing. But good news is that I'm gonna have a nice room, 12-foot ceiling.
Beautiful.
9.2.4 Dolby Atmos home theater.
Wow.
And yeah, it's pretty awesome. And a Brunswick Gold Crown 4.
The necessities.
Oh, listen to this. I found a gentleman on Facebook Marketplace. This is why patience pays off. He's selling a Brunswick Gold Crown 4, which I believe it was released in 2002. So it's like a little over 21 years old, or almost 21 years old. But anyway, I go to his house in Vero Beach. It's about 3.5 hour drive from where I'm at in Miami. And I take a look at in his table, and I go like this, and I have to contain myself because I'm looking at the table and I'm saying, this table looks like it's brand new. I said, it looks like it came straight from Brunswick. I said, how long have you had this table? He said, I'm only the second owner, and I bought it with the hopes of playing my son twice a week. We only played once a month for 5 years. Wow. The original owner put it in his house. This guy had a ton of money, put it in his mansion for 15 years and only played on it once. When you look at the table, I don't think they put 50 hours of play on this table. It's brand spanking new. He sold it to me for $2,500.
What?
Mint.
I sold that table. So.
Wow, that's crazy. Yeah, you can't go in there too excited, Tony, because then they'll be like, "Oh, maybe I'm sitting on a gem here."
Yeah. That's probably the main reason why I did that. But I plan on restarting my YouTube channel and stuff like that, and doing some instructional videos from my room. So I'm pretty excited about that.
That's awesome. Well, anything we can do to help you out, let us know. What's the reason? So I kind of have my thoughts on this, but what's the reason that you went with a Gold Crown?
Oh, very simple, because I still plan on competing, but all the places in Miami where I live have either 4.5 or 4.25 inch pockets. The academy that I play out of has 2 Predator tables, 4.25 inch pockets, 3 Gandy tables, but with Brunswick rails. 2 of them are 4.5, and the other one is 4. So I have access to this place 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They give you a key fob. When you're a member, they charge $100 a month. You go and scan the key, and you go there at any time you want. I mean, you want to go there and practice 3, 4, 5 in the morning? I have this doctor that I give lessons to at 6 in the morning sometimes before he goes to work.
That's awesome.
Since I already have those tables and I have access to it, I haven't really been able to run a lot of balls in straight pool because I'm trying to run balls and try running 100 in straight pool, which is my best game in 8 ball. But try running 100 in straight pool in 4-inch pockets. It's almost impossible. So I think, you know what? Why not get the Brunswick, which comes with 5-inch pockets? I can play my straight pool whenever I want, and then whenever I have to go practice for a tournament, I go to the academy.
That's perfect. You got it locked up. And Melina, you don't know this, but my wife's brother lives literally in the same neighborhood as Tony. I was out there for like 4 days, And I hit Tony up, and I didn't get a chance to catch up with him, but I was so disappointed afterwards, because then afterwards I find out about the academy, and I'm like, man, we could have been playing pool the whole time.
Hung out over there.
Yeah. You guys are welcome as my guests anytime.
That's awesome.
It's called the South Dade Billiards Academy. It's like my second home. They're like my second family. They're really good people.
That's
cool. How has that transition been for you, Tony, leaving the New York area and moving down south?
Business wise, it's been a little slow because it's not New York. In New York, you get lessons all the time, you get gigs all the time, private corporate parties. It's a big city. Over here, nowhere near, not even close. But I do honestly believe that I might have prolonged my life by at least 10 years living here because I'm always active. Because in New York, in the winter time, when it's cold, you just want to stay home and do nothing. Over here, in the winter, it's pretty hot. I told my wife last year when I was setting up Christmas decorations, and I said, honey, I don't think I'll ever get used to sweating to death setting up Christmas decorations.
Welcome to the golf, Tony. Welcome to the golf, buddy.
Yeah. Christmas lights on palm trees. What are you going to do?
Yeah. But it's good. It's good. I love it.
Yeah. Tony, I want to ask you this because there's been a lot of talk about when they had the U.S. Open in Atlantic City, there was some weather off the coast and it led to some humid conditions. And obviously there was a big tournament over in Vietnam recently and there's humidity over there. And now you're living in like, I guess, one of the most humid places in the United States for sure. Have you noticed a difference in how the balls and the tables play now that you're in South Florida?
To be quite honest with you, Ryan, I mean, Joey, I can't. Every place that I've been to has such perfect air conditioning. I can't complain about the equipment. Yeah. It runs, to me, it runs the same as it did in New York. I don't have to make any major adjustments. The only time I remember when I was on the road many years ago in the 90s, when I used to gamble, I came down south here. There were a couple of rooms that I went to that I was completely lost. I couldn't control the cue ball. My life depended on it. And I was good at adjusting to tables because, when I was 15 years old, I read an article that said in order to become a true master of the table, you must learn to adapt to different types of equipment. So I took that literally and I made it my business for the next 2.5 years to practice in 5 different pool rooms where the tables ran short, long, normal, fast, and slow. So I was able to learn how to adapt. But there's this one place, I don't remember the name of the room, but it was in Winter Haven, Florida, where, man, I mean, I just could not control the ball.
And you were 15 when you did that?
Yeah, I wish.
Wow.
No. I read the article when I was 15, but I didn't start practicing 12 hours a day, 6 days a week until I finished high school. My parents wouldn't allow me to.
Tony, it's such an unsettling feeling for a pool player when you have somewhat of a mastery of the game. And then it's like you go out to one particular event and you just can't find it, right? My daughter does gymnastics and her best routine is the balance beam. She's getting 9.7s, 9.6s. And then one day she just struggled with the balance beam. It was like she couldn't find it. And it reminded me in pool of those days where I just get out there and it's almost like you can't make a ball. And other days you're running tables and you feel like you got things going on. So that experience, I can relate to that. And I don't know if Molina Mike can, because I don't know if he's ever ran a table. But
when I did a balance beam, I was pretty good. Go back to my dad.
Well, I can tell you this, and that's the difference between the great players and the elite players. When you have those bad days, if you can honestly say that you left it all on the table and you gave your absolute best, you'd be surprised how many times you win a match playing your absolute worst. And then next thing, the following day, you're back on track.
Yeah, that's what's remarkable. That's what's remarkable about seeing guys with such consistency all over the world. It's back to what Tony was saying. It's their ability to adjust given the conditions because everything's going to play so different depending on where you're at. And yet to still have that kind of dominating performance that we've seen from like the Franciscos or the consistencies from the Joshes and Albins and Shanes for, 10 plus years, that's just something that really separates a really strong player from just the elite of the elite.
I agree. Well, they have become good at making those adjustments. Go ahead, Joey.
I was just going to say, talking about the elite of the elite, we have the World 8-Ball going on right now in Austria. Molina and I did a show on this last night, but I want to get your take on a few of these players that are left in it, Tony. We have a few matches. I think Molina's going to make the adjustment now and put them up on the screen. But we have Max Lechner, Molina's favorite player in the world, by the way. I don't know if you know this, against Josh Filler.
I did not know that.
Hayato from Japan against Zhang Junlin. We have Sanjin against Conrad, Mario He against Thomas Kaplan, Kachi versus Marco Tucher, Fedor Gors versus Wojciech, Alex Kazakis versus Shane Van Boning, and Naoki Oi versus Francisco Sanchez Ruiz. And the comment that we had last night is, if you look at this kind of these players, there's so many non-8-ball events going on right now, rotation events, 9-ball events. It's hard to even remember who is going to have an advantage with pattern play or maybe the break or those things that are really important in 8-ball. And I know 8-ball was one of your best games along with straight pool. I'm curious if any of these names jump out to you as maybe a favorite or someone that you look towards as having an advantage in this field.
I think Francisco has an excellent chance of repeating. And the reason why I say that is because, Francisco and David and I are super close friends. We're literally like brothers. And David actually came last month to Miami to visit me with his wife and daughter. We had a great time here. And Francisco and David asked me for help last year at the American 14.1. And I got on the table with Francisco for 2.5 hours. And this kid absorbed everything and did it so quickly, it was scary.
Yeah.
And I really believe he took some of that knowledge to the World 8-ball last year. In Puerto Rico, which I also did commentary for some of his matches, and he got it. He got it. The one thing that I look for when I'm playing 8-ball, there's several things that I look for. I identify my trouble spots in the very beginning, and the first thing that I ask myself is there a way for me to bank a ball near that cluster so that I can break it later on, whilst not leaving my opponent a run out? And if I have the opportunity to do that, I'm going to take it one step further. If now in my next shot, do I have an opportunity to push a ball in front of a pocket so that later on in the rack, when I do break out that cluster, I have an insurance shot. So that way, if I don't end up with a shot after breaking up the cluster, I have what you guys know I call a Geico. Right?
Insurance, baby, insurance. I like it.
Yeah, they just raised my rates, Tony. Can we change the name, make it State Farm or something?
Yeah. Oh, sorry about that, man. Sorry.
Yeah.
And then another strategy that I use when I'm playing 8-ball, if I'm in a safety battle, excuse me, I'm suffering from asthma. If I'm in a safety battle, I learned this lesson playing Nick Varner in the World 8-ball Championship over 20 years ago. He kept playing me safe on the upper or the top side of the table, and he kept putting me behind this 1-2 balls that he had up there. Most of my balls were in the center of the table, and I said, wait a minute, what if I put one of my balls on top of the table? That way I have one on top, one in the middle, and one in the bottom, so no matter where he plays safe against me, I have a ball to defend myself with.
Right.
Sure enough, I put a ball by the top of the table. Nick Varner's went like this.
He knew.
Like that.
He knew.
Because he knew I figured it out.
Yeah.
Right. And from that moment on, it's just and Joey knows this. We did an interview before, and straight pool had set the foundation for my 8-ball game because it's very helpful. It teaches you about cluster management. It's very rare I'll run into a cluster, not know what shot I'm going to end up with, or not know where the cue ball is going to end up. And I think that players need to pay a little more attention to that. So that's one of the things that I was working with Francisco, and I was also teaching him more about minimizing the movement of the cue ball being his number one priority. And he got it. It's showing in this tournament. I mean, he's been dominating. Look, Mika's an incredible 8-ball player. I think Mika might have lost in the final. I think Mika lost in the final one year against Efren Reyes in the World 8-ball Championship, if I'm not mistaken. And Francisco beat him 10-3 last night.
Yeah. Yeah. This is some next. Sorry, Mike. Go.
No, I was going to say, when you talk about cluster management, are you talking about when you're coming into the pack, you want to hit specific spots? You want to hit a specific angle of the ball you wanted to go into off the rail, or maybe hit it full? Or is that what you're referring to, Tony?
In a sense, I am, because it all depends. Because if I see that I have no choice but to hit one side of the ball, let's say the object ball that I'm shooting is too close to the ball that I'm going to run into. So now I start analyzing where's it going to go coming off this ball, coming off the rail. And by figuring out where it's going to go, it helps me determine which speed to hit my shot with. So that way I can manage it.
See, this is the kind of stuff. These are nuggets you don't get every day. These are great tips, Tony.
Well, the thing about
most people, when they run into a cluster, they just hit it hard and hope and pray for the best, and that's why sometimes it works out and sometimes it does not.
I'm that guy, Tony. I'm that guy, and then I'm paying off at the end.
Not anymore.
Right.
Like, I love the part about positioning your balls in such a way that, because we've all been there, right? We've all been down to the 8 ball or the ball before the 8 or a couple balls before the 8, and our opponent has all 7 balls on the table, right? And they're just biding time and putting you behind balls, and you're kicking or whatever. So I love the forethought of thinking where positionally to move your balls to give yourself a better chance, when that opponent is kind of ducking and, trying to get that tactical advantage. That's huge. And the fact that Nick Varner gave you the nod on that, he's like, oh, he's got it. He figured it out. That's super cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's like it's a very strategic game. People don't give it enough credit for what a strategic game it is, because most of the time these players are running out, but every once in a while you have a rack where the balls are spread in a way where one of your balls doesn't have a pocket, one of his balls doesn't have a pocket. So you end up getting to a safety battle. And if I see that he has an opportunity before I give him another shot at the table to run out, if I screw up this shot, whatever, if I don't have the angle that I'm looking for to screw something up, I'll send one of my balls and tie up the 8 ball, or I'll take an intentional foul by hitting his ball to the 8 ball if I don't have a ball available to run into the 8 ball.
Lock it up.
If I know that it increases the chances of him not running out the rack.
Yeah, that's interesting. Tony, I don't want to put you in a bad spot here, but I do want to get your opinion on this because we spent a good bit of time talking about this last night, and we're seeing a lot of inconsistencies with the rack. And they're using that predator rack. It's not the same as your traditional triangle. It's not like, using a template or anything like that. And we're seeing a lot of, I know if you commentated matches at this event last year, you probably saw it too, right? There's a lot of times where the players are breaking the balls and not getting that spread. Are you noticing that? And what are your thoughts on that?
Well, to be honest with you, I have not had much time to watch I have not watched a single match. I'm just kind of like, this guy's going to play that guy. Let me rewind to the last rack to see who won.
I like your style, Tony.
Let me fast forward because I don't have the time. I'm sanding the windowsills because I have to sand them and then prime them and then paint them. So it's like, and then on top of that, I have to pick up my son from school at 3:00.
Yeah.
So
Lord, I know those problems.
Time. Yeah, I don't have much time nowadays, so it's hard for me to tell. It did happen a couple of times last year, but I don't think it happened as much as maybe you say it's happening this year. I do know that they work very hard creating the divots by banging them on the table before they start using that rack. So I can't imagine what the problem would be, because normally if they don't stay, you have to keep banging them harder until eventually they stay to the point where you can even put them there without using the rack. And so I don't know what the problem is. I mean, the only thing that I can think of is maybe the person who's racking the balls is putting it a little above or a little below where the divots are.
Yeah.
And then you know what happens when you start doing that? It starts creating more divots in other areas.
Yeah.
So if you start creating more divots in other areas, now 14 balls might freeze, but now the 15th ball has a new divot and prefers to stay on that new divot, which ends up being the head ball.
Yeah.
And I think that could definitely be a problem. There's no doubt about that.
Melina and I, it's one of our bitter disagreements that we have, where he loves a neutral racker, with a rack, a hand rack, and I love a template because
it's
I just
such
feel
a balance, man. Because I love
when
moving,
I see guys who are like, I know what's happened to my eyesight and I'm 51, and I see guys that are 10, 15 years older than me trying to do a rack, and I'm like, there's no way they're seeing the gaps in there. It's just not happening. As good a referee as they might be on calling balls and strikes, to see those gaps in that rack is super tough. And so I always say, you know what, put a template in there. Let's see what we got going on. You'll notice.
Isn't it kind of hard to dog the template though?
Exactly. But I'm saying with the rack, with the actual triangle. That's what Melina favors. And by the way, you see these matches lighting up here. They're getting underway, which is kind of cool. And so
great.
Yeah, we'll probably see some of these. But Mike, why don't we transition over to the ladies and take a look? Because we've already had, I think, one round today of the ladies and some stuff going on.
Yeah, before we go into that, I think you guys are going to find this very interesting. Most people know that I'm a massive Dragon Ball Z fan, and Goku is my hero. He's the main character in Dragon Ball. My license plate reads Goku DB. So Francisco is playing Naoki Oi. Francisco just sent me a Goku action figure from Spain, and Naoki Oi brought one over from Japan.
They know you too well, buddy.
Yeah, he knows. He also loves Dragon Ball. So I just received it yesterday, and I showed it to my son, and my son went. You know how they go when they get excited. He freaking loved it. It's awesome.
That's awesome.
You got some good friends, man. You got some real good friends.
They're good people.
So the women's World 10 ball is back, and that's cool. Yesterday, I think we had 16 players, and it looks like they've already played one round today. That match, scroll up, Melina. Scroll up, because that match up the top was the one that we were certainly watching between Chao and Siming Chen, and Chao ends up taking that down 9-7. So you and I had talked about maybe whoever wins that match being the favorite here to win this whole thing. You'll see Cheska cruises 9-0 in her match against the German player. Allison with a 9-6 victory. Wei Wei wins 9-2 over Sarah Rocha. Rubelin 9-6 winner over Zlateva. Mike's lady Han Yu wins 9-4. Pia Filler comes up a little short against Liu, and Kelly Fisher with a 9-8 win over Wang. So that's the ladies' matches that occurred this morning for us over here this afternoon if you're in Austria. Some good matches there, and the 2 Filipino players make it out, the 2 British players make it out, 2 Taiwanese make it out. So it's really interesting final 8 here, and they're already underway. You see some of the scores up there. Anybody jump out to you on this board, Tony?
I can't really see the names. I mean, if you allow me to put my glasses on, my old man glasses.
Yeah, sure.
I was shocked when Mike told me he's 51, but I'm 57, brother.
Oh, no, I'm 51. Mike's still a youngster.
Yeah, young whippersnapper, like Joey calls me.
I know I look younger than Mike, but he's younger than me.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow, that's awesome. Good for you guys. Cheska, man, what a talent that girl is, man. It's like every time I see her, I'm impressed. I got to do a couple of her matches last year, actually earlier this year in Atlantic City when they did the Women's World Championship.
Netball. Yeah, World Netball.
Yeah.
But Chao Che-Yu, she's in a league of her own. She's been so consistent in winning these major tournaments that it wouldn't surprise me if she won this one again. But she's starting to I think she lost the last time she played Kelly, if I'm not mistaken.
In this tournament?
I believe you're right. No, not in this tournament. No.
Oh.
No, it was a previous tournament, I think. Yeah. So I'm really impressed with Chao Che-Yu. I got to do a number of her matches, and man, it's like it is amazing how far the women have come in this game. It really, truly is.
We were talking about that last night.
Even back then, I used to defend Allison and the oh my God, I can't forget. I feel embarrassed forgetting her name. The Irish Invader.
Oh, Karen Core.
Karen Core. Yeah. So Karen, forgive me because I know her very well. I don't want her to get mad at me. But anyway, even back then, Mika and I had an argument many years ago that if the women played in every men's tour stop and they play alternate breaks, that they one of them might have a chance to win the tournament. And he said, no way. And we went back and forth for like 15 minutes. And then all of a sudden, the tournament director, Mika Iman and Karen Core, table number 10. I said, okay, we'll just continue this discussion later. So an hour goes by, and I said, what happened, bro? She got me 9-8. and then I looked at him and I said, I rest my case.
So look, it was probably 2018, somewhere around there, maybe 2017. Karen Core, again, another usual suspect, same conversation. She beats Ko Pin-Yi like 9-1 at the International. Like not even close, Tony. Just dominates Ko Pin-Yi at the International. This is like 2 years or so removed when Ko Pin-Yi was a dual world champion. You know, so it could happen, but it's whether or not they can sustain, and there's, you know, that longevity of the tournament, and of course everything kind of has to play in their favor along the way.
That's correct, yeah. But it's not impossible if they played in every event. I really do believe, especially nowadays, I think the level has definitely increased significantly compared to back then, and because I tell people all the time, I think that the players today are so much stronger than they were in my era.
Why do you say that, Tony?
All players?
Most of the players, and I'm going to tell you why. Like with the exception of Mike Siegel, Nick Varner, Buddy Hall, Earl Strickland, you know, the elite, because there are more elite level players now than there were back then. But if the way Buddy Hall and Kim Davenport, let's say, played back then, if they played today the way they played back then, I don't think they would stand a chance, because the players of today kick better, play safety better, bank better. They mastered every single aspect of their game. These guys now, but in the defense of Buddy and Kim Davenport, if they were playing in this day and age, they probably would be as good because they know that that's what they need to work on more.
Yeah.
See, back then we didn't work on those areas like they do now. Now they don't miss a beat. They don't miss anything. They literally worked on everything. If they have to practice a 1-inch draw with the cue ball this close to the object ball, then if that means that they have to practice with no balls on the table and just a pool stick, bringing it back immediately as soon as they stroke, they'll do that. They will do whatever it takes to improve their game.
How do you elite players have that kind of discipline, Tony, to be able to sit there and just do something that can be so tedious over and over and over again like that?
Because we want to win badly. You know, I don't do that anymore because I don't have the time. My life has changed dramatically. But we really want to win. If you want to win, it's like in other sports. You ever hear when one guy says, I'm practicing 12 hours a day. Oh, if you're practicing 12 hours a day, I'm going to practice 13 hours a day. Yeah. Because I want to stay one step ahead of you. Yeah. I want to be that guy. It's like Kobe Bryant. I'm pretty sure.
I was gonna say Kobe. That's who I was about to mention, because you always hear those stories of like the day after the finals, he's getting up at 4 a.m. and going back in the gym. Yeah. You know, like you don't even have time to rest on your accomplishments. 14
hours a day throughout the entire summer to get ready for the NBA season. It's not going to matter. I've been doing that my entire lifetime, so I already have more weapons in my arsenal than they do. They have a lot of catching up to do. And that's the difference in pool, too. In pool, you know, if you have one guy that has 100 weapons in their arsenal and the other guy has 50, what do you think is going to happen? They're going to lose 7-5, 7-6, 7-4, 7-5, 7-6. The only way they're going to get over that hump is if they go figure out what their weaknesses are, go and master them, as tedious as they may be, add 100 new weapons in their arsenal. Now they have 50 more than their opponent. They finally get over that hump, and now they're beating their opponents.
Let me ask you about that kind of same scenario, right? You talked about your boy, Francisco, right? Great guy. But for many years, you know, he was always in that like 16, 8, 32 range consistently over and over and over again, right? Like he was always in that same realm. And then the wheels came off, Tony. He just he broke down that wall and he's snapping off everything. Yeah, in a great way, right? What changed, Tony? What changed for him specifically?
He said it himself when he realized that he started believing in himself. You know, there's this video that I watch whenever I'm preparing myself for a tournament, The Secrets of Preventing Overtrying. And when I watched this video for the very first time in my life, I was shocked to know. I was shocked to find out that I went an entire career overtrying. I had no clue that I was. And this guy basically says, if you're thinking about results, you're overtrying. Why do you think that when you watch an elite player miss a shot in a major tournament, they're disappointed or shocked? Because they never expected to miss that shot to begin with. Right. Whereas you have someone who hasn't mastered that mental game to that level, they miss a shot. In their mind, they say, I better not miss a shot because it might cost me the match. I better shoot it this way just in case I miss, I leave them safe. No, in the elite level, these guys already know the shot is in. They just have to execute. They want to make sure that the consistency is the same with the fundamentals. Yeah. So that's why when they miss a ball, they're shocked. And that's what happened. He started, and listen, this is a reason why I've always valued Dragon Ball so much, because there's so much knowledge within that Japanese anime. For example, when Goku's son finally reached a level above him, his teacher told him, he says, nothing is holding Gohan back now. He's finally learned how to tap into his power at will. That's what Francisco has done. He's learned how to tap to his power at will, on command, when he needs it, and that's why he's did so well last year, winning all those major tournaments.
That's kind of cool. It got me thinking. It gave me goosebumps. Story. It gave me goosebumps a little, thinking of like, when in
that one
the
time
Matrix,
at the Expo, Joe?
In the Matrix, when like he finally unlocked the ability to dodge bullets, and you know what I mean? Like,
oh yeah, he says no. Remember, he says when he was fighting Morpheus, he says, "You're faster than this. Don't think you are. Know you are."
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And that's the thing. You have to know. When I'm shooting a shot, I'm not thinking about whether or not the ball is going in the pocket. In my mind, I'm thinking to myself, the spot on the ball that I select is a pocket, because if I hit it, it's going to go in the pocket. So I'm expecting it to go in.
Yeah.
Right. But I don't think
y'all are just blowing my mind.
This shot is hard. It's a 90-degree angle cut. You know, I was teaching someone who practiced more than I did, but never got to the elite level. And he was asking for advice on a shot. And I said, but this shot is semi-tough. He said, no, that's very tough. And I looked at him and I said, look, you've been playing pool for 20 years. If after 20 years you still believe this is a tough shot, you're in the wrong game. That's what I told him, because you have to change you're either in the wrong game or you have to change your way of thinking. It's all about attitude and how you approach a shot with the proper attitude. You literally have to approach it really believing that you're going to make the ball, not saying, well, by that I don't mean I'm going to make the ball. I'm going to make the ball. I'm not going to dog it. No, just stay focused on your technique, and the shot will take care of itself on its own. But if you focus on the outcome of the result of the shot, now you're sending a message to your brain to remind you of how it is that it needs to stroke in order to help it in. Yeah. And that's when the mechanics and fundamentals start to fall apart.
You know, Tony,
you keep on dropping nuggets like this, I'm gonna throw up a paywall right here. Tony. We're gonna start charging for attendance around here.
Even though I've been playing pool for almost 45 years, I've been teaching for 35 of those years. I've always been a student of the game, but I was very fortunate that growing up, I didn't have any pros teaching me. I had to shoot these shots hundreds of thousands of times before it registered in my brain. It's never going to work like this from now until the day you die. Let's try this. That's not going to work. Let's try until eventually you find something. So I went through all the trial and the error, but I was willing to put in the time. But because when I was a teenager, you don't get bored playing pool because you get bitten by the bug. But you asked me to practice 13, 12, 14 hours a day now. I got a better chance of hitting the sun with a snowball.
There you go. There you go.
You know, when I first realized that there were like levels to this thing, right? As you're coming up as a player and you realize there's levels. I remember I was playing Scotch doubles. It was one of those tournaments where the way the handicaps work out, you needed a weak player and a strong player or two middle of the road players. And so I had a weak player with me. And I remember they rolled up on a shot, or I left them a shot, and they're like, man, this is a really hard shot. And so they get down and they shoot the shot and they miss the shot. And afterwards I talked to them and I said, look, there's not really hard shots. And they're like, what do you mean? And I said, well, you look at a shot, you look at the way it's laid out. Is it possible to make the shot? Do the physics work? Okay. If the physics work, then you just get down and make the shot, right? You think about it that way. You don't think about the degree of difficulty on the shot. If it can go, lock in, shoot the shot, and say you're going to make the shot, right? And that player was like, wow, they came back to me months later and said, now that I know that, my game has jumped. You know, it's just taken off because it's kind of – yeah, because it's like in their mind, they know they're going to make it 2 out of 10 times. And because of that, their fundamentals break down, right? But if they look at it and say, this shot is possible, this is a makeable shot, I just need to make it, and they get down on the ball and shoot it with their fundamentals, they're going to make that ball more than 2 out of 10. I don't know how many out of 10, but they're going to make it more often than not.
And that's why I say that what's the point of practicing a shot hundreds of thousands of times or 1,000 times or whatever, 10 hours in a row, if you still believe that the shot is hard? What's the point then? That means you haven't changed this. You're trying to change this, but you're not changing this, which is the most important thing. This is what controls this.
Yeah. Yep. I love that. Well, why don't we shift gears a little bit? You know, Tony, you reached out to us. We've been pretty vocal about some of the stuff that's been going on in the pool world. You know, we're always going to try to take the side of the players, because from from my standpoint, at least I can't speak for Melina, but from my standpoint, I want to see players have the most opportunities possible. When you were in the grease and you were out there playing all the time, I wanted you to be able to go to wherever you wanted to go to play in a pool tournament, right? And I will always support that. And so now there's been some controversy. The WPA, Matchroom, obviously there's a feud there. And WPA just had their General Assembly in Qatar, and they voted to ban players that are playing in unsanctioned events. And so, you know, as a former, as a current pool player, and even though you're kind of a carpenter, it seems, from fixing your house and stuff, but you also ran a tour at one time, you know, where you had a bunch of players that would stop in and play in your events, and really just someone who is just a great guy in the sport. You reached out, you wanted to kind of share some of your opinions, maybe some advice for some of the players out there. So the floor is yours, man.
You know what it is? I'm very good friends with a lot of these players, and I went through an experience in, I want to say, 98, when I won a sportsmanship award, and they gave me a check for $2,500 for that in the Camel Pro Billiard Series. I finished ranked 12th that year on the tour, and they gave me a check for $7,500. So I'm walking to the table with $10,000, and Grady Matthews is sitting next to me, and Grady has his head down, and I say, "Hey, Grady, what's going on?" And he says, "You know, I have $15,000 in the bank this year, and I spent it all playing on the tour this year, 16 stops this year in the Camel Pro Billiard Series. I never cashed once. I'm flat broke now. I can't believe I put 40 years into this game and I have nothing to show for it." And after he finished those words, he put his head down and 2 tears rolled down his eyes. And I knew Grady very well because he was a very proud man. He was not the type of man to cry. And when I saw that, Joey, I fast forwarded 20 years ahead, and I said, you know what? I don't want to be in that position when I get to his age, so I'm going to make it my business to make sure that I'm not in that position by the time I reach his age. So little by little, I started separating myself from the tour, whatever, and trying to find more ways to make money with the game that I love. So I started doing private lessons. I started doing corporate parties. I started my own tour. I started my own league from scratch. Next thing you know, I have multiple sources of income. And I believe I was the only pool player in the world making a really good living, if not probably better than some players, without hitting a ball. And, you know, does that mean that the titles don't mean anything to me? Well, I mean, they do. You know, every player dreams of winning the U.S. Open and the World Championship, but I had a choice to make. Do I want my son to grow up knowing who his father was? Because I saw a lot of these players, one of them went 12 years without seeing his son. When he saw his son didn't know who he was. I didn't want to be in that position. Imagine your daughter's not knowing who you are, Mike. You can't even imagine it, right? So it's like I had to make a decision. Right. So, you know, when people ask me why, when you won the 2004 BCA Open 9-Ball Championship, which was my first major title, why didn't you win any more after that? What happened? I made a decision. I thought about Grady after I won that, even though it was like 6 years later. And I said, okay, I finally won my first major tournament. What can I do to make a living now? Because times are getting tougher. And that's what I started to do. You know, I don't know if you know that there's this guy named Michael Loeb. He's a multi-billionaire who owns a mansion in Long Island, New York, Southampton. And he invites me once a year to his mansion to do a little bit of a pool tutorial for all the students. This is what he does. This is how awesome this guy is. He flies all the top students from all the universities, top universities, Harvard, Stanford, Princeton, Wharton, all over the United States to his mansion, and he invites CEOs of major corporations to make speeches and inspire these young kids on how to become better entrepreneurs to hopefully secure the future of the country. And he heard of me, and I gave him a lesson once, and he invites me every year for the last 5 years in a row, and this is what I do. I set up a table, and I tell them, look, when I run this table, I don't go in there head first without any plan. I have a plan. This ball connects to that ball. This ball connects to that ball. It's like connecting the dots when you have a drawing in school. But most importantly, the reason why Michael invited me here is to teach you guys that if you have a passion for something and it's not working out, find another way within that same passion, because there is always a way. It's your job to find it. So I found it. That's why I'm in a good position now. You know, when I met my wife, I don't discuss this with too many people, over 18 years ago, She was shocked when I told her I was $55,000 in debt. And she told me a couple of years later, I will not marry a man who's in debt. Right? So lucky for me, she's a CPA. So she taught me about accounting, about how to save money, about how to not wait. In 2.5 years, I was debt free, and I have been debt free since then. I don't owe anyone a single dollar.
Wow.
And I noticed that a lot of these players are getting into debt. So the reason why I wanted to come here is that I want them to think about their future. I want them to think, will the people that are trying to stop you now care about you when you're older and you're no longer able to play and you need to take care of your family? You have to think of those things, because no matter how good you are, none of us are perfect. There's no way you're going to be able to play at that level for the rest of your life. You know, I feel sorry and bad for Earl whenever I see that he's not what he used to be. He tried so hard to play the way he used to be. I got to witness him when he was in his prime, and I've never seen anything like him. I mean, he is the exception. It didn't matter. He hit so many people with so many 5, 6, and 7 packs. I feel like UPS is going to go there every day to make special deliveries. That's what he was doing, special delivery packages. You know, it's like I think a lot of these players aren't thinking about their future. And I think that when you are an organization that is trying to force players into a position that they don't want to be in, you're going to create resentment. And I think you're going to end up getting a lack of support from a lot of people as well. And I think that's extremely important. I want to make sure that the players are here to understand that sometimes you need to make a sacrifice in order to secure your future.
But how do you sell that to players who are maybe in the later stages of their career, Tony, who have already, they're not going to see those benefits of maybe decisions that are made today?
Well, if you're older, I still believe that you should, for example, try to learn how to do private events. Try to do more lessons. Some of these players don't like to do lessons, but look, Mike, when I do private events, I charge $500 an hour with a 2-hour minimum, right?
I guess in what I mean, Tony, is that, like, let's say decisions that are made today, it'll benefit these younger generation of players, but maybe right now, me being an older player, I want to look for what's going to satisfy my need for whether it's financial or otherwise now, today, tomorrow. You know what I mean? Like, not something that's I'm going to look for. I'm not planning 5 years down the road when, I'm trying to make sure the rent's paid, for the next 6 months. You know what I'm saying?
If that's what you're trying to do, then you have to do what you feel is going to benefit you the most as a player. If you're an elite player and you're making that money, I don't think some of the elite players really have anything to worry about, regardless of where they play, because they're going to win. The cream always rises to the top. But when you're the mid-level players, you have to do some serious thinking. Because no matter how you chop it down, unless this is golf that pays $100,000 for God knows what place, right? Maybe 50th place, whatever. I don't know what the payout in golf is. You have to do some serious thinking and think about what you think is going to benefit you more financially, if that's the case. But either way, you have to do what you feel is right for you. And because in my opinion, the time is now, and you need to know that your decision is good enough and you need to run with it. You need to make that decision and say to yourself, what is going to benefit me now? Because let me tell you, there's a lot of stuff going out there as far as events. I think we have more now than we've had in a very long time. But what Emily Frazier and Matchroom have done in the few short years is unbelievable. It's amazing. I've never seen quite a production with that. Maybe something that came close was the IPT. The IPT, when the IPT was around, they used to have masseuses waiting for you in the green room to give you massages in between matches. They had lemon-scented heated towels for you to refreshen yourself up in between matches. If you walked in that room or even peeked inside the room on a day that you didn't play a match, they would fine you $500.
Really?
Yeah, Johnny Archer was fined $500 one time just for going in there to grab an apple. And he didn't complain about it. He paid it. He paid it because you're making so much money. He made $50,000 for finishing in 5th, 6th, or something like that. He said, I never made $50,000 in my life winning a major tournament.
Yeah.
So I think that it's only going to, I think that what Matchroom is doing is incredible. I think that it's only going to grow. And I'm not saying that the other tournaments are bad, But if you're talking about your future in the long run, I think that they are looking at that. They're looking to make it bigger. People don't understand that if you go too big too soon, you're doomed to fail from the beginning. That's why when the Camel Pro Builder Series came around in the 90s, players kept complaining so much. Oh, you guys own Camel cigarettes. You RJ Reynolds Tobacco Company. You guys are billionaires. Why don't you pay $1 million for first? They kept complaining, and some of the people that were running the tour were getting tired of it.
Yeah.
They said we need to build the brand first. We need to build it up, get more people to recognize you guys as players, build the superstars, and then when it gets to that, then we can get there. And I think that Matchroom has created stardom for a number of players with the exposure that they've been giving them. And I think that the players need to take advantage of that, because what happens if they decide to close shop next year? I don't think that's going to happen, because I think that they're in this for the long run. But I've seen tours come and go so many times in almost 45 years of being in the game. And they made so many promises, and eventually they all crumble. They all crumble. So if you have to make a decision now, I'm not saying that these are going to crumble, because there's always a first time for everything. Pick the one, to answer your question, Mike, pick the one that you feel is going to benefit you the most if you need a quick buck. But
yeah,
but then what about the long term then, Tony? Because doesn't that kind of just contradict like you planning for more long term stability and
I'm
success?
the long term guy. But you asked me to answer your question about the short term. It's the short term. You still have to do what's right for you, right? As a player. But I've never been a short term believer, because I've always been that person that I always have a backup plan just in case an emergency comes up. You see, I don't like to get like, my wife's dad sent her an article that, when I read it, I was shocked. It said, do you know that over 75 to 85% of Americans don't have $1,000 in cash to their name if an emergency were to come up?
Yeah.
That's very sad.
Yep.
That's very sad.
Well, and I'm sure in the pool playing public, I'm sure they, it's very much a hot or cold thing. They win a tournament, they have 15 grand, then they go bust, right? I know you've seen
players who just win 40,000. We talked to them 3 days later, and they got a mopey look on their face. Look, meanwhile, they're at the casino.
Many times I've walked out of the tournament room and seen a pro player sleeping in their car. I mean, it's just reality, right?
Yeah, it's
what we deal with.
But what a lot of people don't realize too, guys, that the taxes. Like when David, our guy that visited me here in Miami last month, I was shocked when he told me that they take almost 50% of his taxes in Spain. It's actually more than here in the States. He said he's 50? Considering leaving, almost 50. He said he's considering leaving Spain because of how high the tax brackets are.
He better be careful, because they just busted Shakira over there. I don't know if you heard this, but like same thing. She was married to that soccer player over there, and makes tons of money, but they're taking tons of money. And I think she figured out some way to like set up residence somewhere else, and they prosecuted her. So Spain is a country where they'll come after you for your taxes big time.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I'll make sure I tell him that when I speak to him. But it's just,
and tell him Shakira's available.
You just won $100,000 for first. They don't realize that they have to give probably 50% of that, right? And then if you make a saver with someone, you got to give them a percentage too. That's if you make a saver. I don't think
that's a big slice. That's a real big slice.
Big slice.
So when I think it's easy, Tony, to kind of jump on the WPA being the villain bandwagon, because, Matchroom right now is hot. We've seen them growing. We've seen more events. We've seen bigger events. Like if that event in Vietnam was unbelievable. If you look at all the people, I mean, you just saw the stands, the bleachers going up. And I mean, there were a couple thousand people there.
To watch. It really was.
Yeah, it was super cool. And so they're like the hot thing right now. But then we have WPA on, and I see some of their points too, right? Matchroom has the contract. It's trying to lock players in. They're not holding people to that contract right now, but the potential is there in the future that they could say, no, you're only allowed to play in Matchroom events, right? And so I see a governing body. I see a need for that too. But right now I'm at the point where I need to see these two come together. I think that's what I feel. They need to get back to the table. Curious to get your thoughts on that.
I think that I've always been a big proponent of working together instead of each other. Like, for example, when George Ginky Sansusi passed away, God rest his soul, I started the Ginky Memorial. So what did I do? Well, Ginky used to play in the Mets tour, which Jose Burgos runs out of Pennsylvania. Hey, Jose, you want to join forces to do the Ginky Memorial together so that way we'll get all the players, as many players as possible, to come honor him? Sure, no problem. The Tri-State Tour run by John Lehman. Hey, John, you want to join forces? We had 254 players one year and 249 players a year after.
Wow.
There to that, because we work together. We work together. And,
awesome.
You know, sometimes I know it's impossible because but you have to be careful the way you conduct business. Because if you conduct business in a way that's going to turn off players or people, you're not doing yourself a disservice. Like, for example, I have a buddy of mine in 2015 who was invited to a major tournament overseas. He was sent an email with the official invitation. He never responded to the email. Can you guys guess what happened next?
No.
He gets a phone call. He gets a phone call on the day of the event and is told or was asked, "Where are you?" He says, "I'm home. I'm home in the States." Says, "Well, you're supposed to be here. Your first match starts soon here in the tournament. I think it was in China." And he says, "But I never responded to your email." He says, "Well, since you never responded to the email, we put you in the draw. You have to pay a fine of $275, and unless you do, you will never be allowed to play in another WPA sanctioned event."
Yeah,
now, how would you feel if they did that to you?
Not good.
I say let's go talk. I say let's go talk outside, Tony. I say let's go talk outside.
Yeah, well, I mean, listen, I'm not making this up. I confirmed this with him before I even came on here because I remember it like it was yesterday. And when he told me that story, I was upset because I felt like it was done to me. And it wasn't even done to me.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that a player should ever be put in that position. And he said he was only one of 4 other players. There were a total of 5 players that did not show up for that event, and they were fined for it. That's like, Mike, that's like my wife said this last night. That's like me reaching out to you and say, "Hey, I want to do a lesson with you soon, Mike. I want to give you a lesson." So I go ahead and book you for a certain date. You don't show up. Mike, you owe me $250 for the lesson. What? Yeah. I never confirmed with you I was taking the lesson. What are you talking about?
It's not like common sense, Tony. It's common sense, right? Decency, how you treat people.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. And that's important because nowhere, I asked him if he still has that email, and he does have the email, right? He saved the email, which I thought was very smart. But at no point in the email did it say that you must respond. If not, you're going to get fined. And that's why I said you have to. There's a right way to do things, and there's a wrong way to do things. And if you do it the wrong way, you're always going to rub people the wrong way, and it's going to be more tougher for you to sell your product.
And I think that's the problem they're having, right? Is that there's been, and I know there's a new board, there's new personalities
decades of lack of trust, and
we know some of them.
People now, I don't know how the people that are there now.
There's a history there.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
it's not a great one.
But telling everything was fine and dandy when everyone was playing here and everyone was playing there. So now all of a sudden you're giving us a choice. You're putting our backs against the wall.
Yeah. So even if we
live in a day and age, gentlemen, where if you say something against one or the other, now all of a sudden you're branded a traitor or a mortal enemy of theirs. It shouldn't be like that. You should have the right to agree to disagree. Like back in the days, me growing up, that's how it was. Right. But I remember I spoke out once about the rankings when they were taken away from one of the tours that I played in many years ago. I spoke out against an organization. I made a quick post and someone contacted me immediately saying, "Tony, you don't want to do that." It was a wife of a former pro player. He said, "My husband did that and he never got another opportunity again." And I'm saying, so I didn't say another word. But see, now I'm in a much more secure point in my life and I'm not going to let anyone dictate to me what I should or should not do. More importantly, I'm not going to let anyone tell me what my worth is.
Well,
right?
This is why we got a responsibility because they can't scare us like that. They can't mute us like that, Joe.
But Tony, you're kind of a great example of this. And I would love to know if you were playing more right now. I would love to know what you would do, because I know you have a relationship with Predator. You've commentated their events.
Mm-hmm.
They're obviously aligned with WPA, but yet you've spoken about the great stuff that Matchroom's doing and the stage that they have. And so you would be one of those players stuck in the middle. You would be a Josh Filler right now who, if you had to bet, I think most players would say he wanted to be in Hanoi, but he ends up in Qatar. So, you know, like, what would you do if you were at that stage where you were out there playing and you had to come down to make a choice, keeping in mind your sponsorships and your relationships?
Yeah, it's very simple for me. But keep in mind, when I used to play full-time on the tour, I had a gentleman by the name of Harold Siegel who was my sponsor for 10 plus years. He paid for everything. I mean, he gave me a deal that you wouldn't believe. He paid for hotel, airfare, entry fee, you name it. And gave me $500 for expense money every tournament that I went to. And I would keep 33% of what I won, and he would keep 60%. It was a great deal.
Yeah.
Right. And it grew as the years went by, especially when I'm DCA. But anyway, if I still had that sponsor and I'm able to go anywhere around the world, absolutely Matchroom. I think that at some point they have to have more tournaments in the States, because right now no one has more tournaments in the States than Predator. So if you're an American player and you can afford to play in America, hey, you know, Predator has the Wisconsin Open, the Ohio Open, the Michigan Open, right?
Well, to be fair,
there's rumors.
We've heard they may not be around next year.
There's a rumor that they're not going to be doing it next year. I also heard the same thing, that they're going to focus on the international events. But like, to answer your question, if I still had my sponsor, because, you know, if I had to sponsor myself, you're talking about what, $2,000 just for the flight ticket, depending where you're going. That's crazy. Yeah, if you're lucky. You have to be among the elite players. I have to be practicing at least 12, 13 hours a day for me to go ahead and take that chance.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, you being an American player, it's a big difference from like one of these younger Polish
federation
players,
support. Yeah.
You know, who have the federations behind them,
monthly stipends, things like that.
And they risk other bans and things of events that might be important to them in their home country and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I mean, I gotten to a point in my life where Grady Matthews gave me some advice many years ago. He said, learn to be your own man. Don't let anyone tell you what you can and cannot do. And another friend of mine who was supposed to be my best man when I almost got married the first time in the year 2000, Mike Barry, one of the top lawyers in New York, great guy, used to give him straight pool lessons back then. He told me never sign a contract or the rights to your likeness, media, or anything unless you're guaranteed at least $50,000 or more. Right? So a lot of times you have some people that I've seen in the past, many years ago, they would have us sign these contracts where you're signing away your life and they're not guaranteeing you a single penny.
Yeah.
So you got to be careful when you sign documents too. You have to do what's going to benefit both parties.
Yeah. I don't know.
One benefits more than the other.
I don't know that players ever, like when I had Carl Boys on, we were talking to him and he was like, players don't read contracts. They should read contracts and they should redline contracts. I'm in the business of making sales and we have a contract for my day job. And almost every single time, whoever I'm making the sale to is going to make red lines and changes to that contract for their terms and conditions that they're agreeable to. You know, I don't think pool players even realize that they have, you can always ask, right? You can always say, hey, I don't want it to say this. I'd prefer it to say this. And depending on who you are in the sport, you might have some, you know, ability to get things changed, at least with your own specific contract.
Tony, I got to tell you, buddy, it's been a real pleasure having you on, and the door is always going to be open for you to come on. I thoroughly enjoyed your wisdom, your perspective, and the way that you deliver it, man.
I appreciate that, gentlemen. I thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm just trying to. So many of these guys are friends of mine, and I want nothing but the best for them. It has nothing to do with this person, that person, that person. Like even Predator's always been very good to me. I have nothing against them, nothing bad to say against them. They've been so incredible to my wife and I for so many years, as has so many other organizations. I want to make sure that these players think long and hard about their futures and beyond their pool careers. What are you going to do afterwards? You know, if you do that, they think about their future, it'll open their eyes. You'd be surprised how many times you think about it just for a couple of minutes and you realize this is what I got to do. So I'm hoping some of them will see this and they'll take a couple of these notes.
You got a lot of respect within the industry, Tony, and this is just one reason why. You know, it's just the way that you handle your business and the person you are, man.
All right, gentlemen. Well, listen, it's been a pleasure. I appreciate you both. Keep doing what you're doing. You guys, I spoke to Mike Penoso a couple of days ago because he calls me every couple of months to do a couple of articles, Reader's Digest, and I love it when he comes on the show. And you guys could bicker back and forth. It's actually great to watch.
I love it, man.
He's an easy target for us. You know,
Yeah.
we can
Anyway,
we can poke the bear a little.
Enjoy your day.
Hey,
We'll
Tony,
talk soon.
thanks so much, man.
All right. Thanks, gentlemen.